Welcome, everybody, to IFA Insights, where we break down real conversations independent advisors really need to be having, but maybe they're overlooking. Today, we're tackling a topic that every advisor knows matters, but few feel very confident in: compliance, especially in the regulatory environment of 2026. And here's the reality: compliance is no longer about just avoiding risk. Done right, it can actually be a practice advantage. So today with us, I have Angie Alexander, our Chief Compliance Officer. Angie, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm really excited about this one because advisors who understand compliance today are the ones who are in a position to grow and move forward tomorrow.
Absolutely. So as we dig deeper into 2026, how do you think the role of compliance has fundamentally changed for independent advisors compared to just even 2 or 3 years ago?
Well, the biggest shift I've seen is that advisors are expected to become more proactive. It used to be about checking boxes and filings, disclosures, the audits, being prepared for audits. But now regulators expect that advisors have very clear systems in place, strong documentation, and intentional processes behind everything that they do, especially when it comes to marketing and communications, technology, and disclosures regarding conflicts of interest, real or perceived.
Yeah, so it sounds like the margin of error is definitely smaller, especially when we're talking about smaller firms with even more limited resources. So that also kind of dovetails onto, it's not just about being compliant, it's like, can you prove it right now, this minute?
Exactly. Documentation is everything right now.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about regulatory changes. I think some people might be making the mistake that there aren't any right now or nothing to really worry about. So what do advisors need to be aware of in 2026, and where are you most seeing either the most confusion or risk?
Well, there are three big areas. Ongoing enforcement of the marketing rule, especially around testimonials and third-party content. Cybersecurity expectations are huge. This continues to be a major top priority for the SEC. New regulations came out last year. It's a big area of focus. And then AI usage, which of course falls under technology, but it's becoming its whole own category. And with very little guidance from the regulators so far, because it's moving faster than they're able to keep up with. So we aren't really sure where that's going, but we do know a few things about how to use it to, be very cautious. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But
Yeah, I think one thing we have to be careful of is just because we haven't heard anything doesn't mean it's okay. So you still have to keep those
right,
cybersecurity regulations in mind.
right. And
So
just because it's common doesn't, and other people are doing it, does not mean that it's okay. It's like they're doing it. It's okay to do it. Let's kind of, remember when we were kids, or if they jump off a cliff, are you going to jump off a cliff?
yeah, there was a
That's
time
not
when
going to work
everybody
these
had
days.
A shares in their wrap accounts as well. And now we know that wasn't okay.
Of
Um,
course.
so let's talk a little bit about like this is going to blow some minds, right? How can compliance actually be a growth enabler? So their advisors often feel like categorize it as the anti-business department or as a bottleneck. What separates firms that use compliance as a growth advantage for those that feel constrained by it?
The biggest priority is when compliance and an advisor work together as a partnership. And my philosophy really is not to say no, but how, and give that guidance and have an ongoing, transparent conversation about real world business situations that the advisors find themselves in, and really, just a collaboration. If there's something that's not compliant, of course we're not going to do it, but we're going to work around, like, how can we make this work? I really want to make this work. Just that collaboration is extremely important right now,
Absolutely.
especially as advisors are moving
Um,
faster, growing faster. We want to work together and make sure, they don't get too far ahead, and that compliance is part of everything that is done.
yeah, I think we've seen a lot of that around marketing as well, with so much media content being created on a regular basis, which actually leads right into my next question. So, with the evolution of the market removal rule, and we're starting to see some enforcements there, what do advisors need to get right when it comes to their social media presence, their testimonials, and any other digital marketing?
Well, this is where things can go really wrong or be really simple. There are three key areas. Archive everything, every social media post, every iteration of it. Clear and accurate disclosures are always critical, especially with testimonials. Structured approval processes. That's critical. I submitted this for approval. Here were changes. I made them. Here's the final version. That audit trail is very important. And the advisors who succeed here in these processes are going to be the ones who build repeatable systems like that and make it just part of everything they do.
Absolutely. So, hot topic, everybody's talking about it, AI and the added technology risk it brings to the table. So, what are those compliance risks and what guardrails should advisors ensure they have in place today as they start to use these tools?
The biggest risk is relying too heavily on AI, on the content that it's generating, and using that content for client communications. The advisor's still responsible for that information. And a lot of times AI can be wrong, believe it or not. You can't just trust that. There's always the human in the loop part that it's critical, and it's how AI works. But so the human review process, clear and documentation that you have used AI, how you've used it, what you've used it for, and internal guidelines for documentation of what it's used for, what it's approved for, what platforms are approved. And regulators are going to be paying close attention to this.
Yep, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the advisor that might be evaluating a new home for their book of business. What are some big compliance red flags they should watch for?
I think, of course, lack of clarity in documentation, slow response times, a no culture, kind of the police versus my partner. That's a key thing that I think advisors should be looking for, and just overall a supportive situation versus no.
Yeah, absolutely. So my last question for you, what does a truly best-in-class compliance program look like today from the advisor's perspective?
That's a good question. I think it comes down to three things. Accessibility. Advisors need to get timely answers so they can continue their business. Collaboration, working towards solutions and not restrictions, as I've mentioned. And proactivity, identifying risks before they become problems. That's critical. And when those are in place, advisors can focus on growth instead of second guessing themselves.
Absolutely. So I may have lied. Actually, that wasn't my last question. I've got a couple more for you. Just thinking about advisors kind of safeguarding their own businesses, what are some best practices each advisor should build into their either daily or weekly workflows?
Okay, well, on this, there are a few non-negotiables. Build structured compliance workflows, document everything, as I keep saying, there's kind of a theme here. Pre-approve all marketing frameworks, train your team consistently, and that's what will keep you protected.
So one other question for you, kind of relating to documentation, since we know that's so important. How does the compliance team feel about using an AI note taker with client meetings?
I think there are a couple things to consider. First, the regulatory world is just kind of starting to see this, is permission from the client to record. That's critical, and it's kind of something that's just assumed often. The note taker could focus kind of on the wrong thing. It could hone in on a specific topic that wasn't really, a key part of the conversation. So a review of that is critical. But I think it's a huge tool that advisors should be using to document, solid, structured client reviews. And they can, go reference those when they go to talk to the client the next time. And it helps us with compliance. We've got a strong recorded history of the last meeting, and that the client's objectives match what's in place in their portfolios. I think it's a great tool. Of course, platforms have to be approved.
Yes, of course. All right. So let's say the SEC walks into an office tomorrow, or a state regulator. what do you think they're most likely going to focus on this year?
A couple of things. Marketing. The new marketing rule came out just a few years ago. They're going to be looking for marketing communications, making sure that you have the right policies and procedures in place for that. Books and records, that's always a big deal. Making sure that everything is on file, accessible, readily accessible is a huge focus right now. And cybersecurity is going to continue to be front and foremost. And this is where most issues tend to show up. I mean, in those three areas.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's wrap this up for real this time. So what's like one shift you would encourage advisors to start making as they move into 2026 to be more compliant?
Start viewing compliance as part of your business. It's just part of, the industry you operate in, and use it as a business strategy. It's not just a requirement. Because when it's done right, it doesn't slow you down. It actually helps you grow compliantly faster and more confidently.
Absolutely. So compliance, it's not going away, even if we want to try to pretend that the SEC isn't there. They're still watching, and just a personal prediction, we may have a slower time right now, but I imagine there'll be a swing back at some point in the future. So would encourage people never to take their foot off the gas when it comes to their regulatory requirements. So if you found this episode valuable, be sure to subscribe and share it with another advisor who needs to hear it. And if you're evaluating your current firm and whether or not they're truly supporting your growth, including their compliance department, we'd love to have that conversation. We'll see you next time on IFA Insights. Thank you, everybody.